Hello, and welcome to this news event sponsored by the law firm Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway, or Piper Wolf for short. You'll be hearing from 3 speakers today, and then we'll open the floor for questions during the Q&A period. The Q&A period will be for reporters only, and if you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it's your turn to ask a question. For more info, you can go to piperwolf.com, where you can find the news release, a link to the lawsuit and related media materials like photos and video. And we're also going to send a direct link to the news release in the chat window, so you can check there now. As I mentioned, you'll be hearing from 3 speakers today. First, Joe Piper, Managing Partner, Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Second, Herb Washington. And third, Conway, Partner, Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. So let's go ahead and begin with our first speaker, Joe Piper, Managing Partner, Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Go ahead, Joe.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this news event organized by my law firm, Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Today, we filed a civil rights lawsuit on behalf of Herb Washington, a college track star at Michigan State University, former Oakland A's player, community leader, and one of the most notable success stories in Black American business. Herb is a bona fide Black American Business Hall of Famer, having amassed the largest number of McDonald's stores of any Black owner in U.S. history. You will hear from Herb Washington in a few minutes. His partner, Kevin Conway, will discuss McDonald's conduct in greater detail. The civil rights lawsuit filed today details how McDonald's redlines Black owners into stores in distressed, predominantly Black neighborhoods, which, as McDonald's knew well, yield considerably less profit than stores in more affluent communities. And now, McDonald's is driving Black franchisees out of its system. In Herb Washington, McDonald's met a force it cannot silence. Nonetheless, it is trying to systematically tear down his empire that started in New York and grew into Ohio and Pennsylvania, forcing him to sell 7 stores in the last 3 years, and in every case, to white owners. You heard that right. Every single one of the stores McDonald's forced Herb Washington to sell ended up in the hands of white owners. The truth is that Herb succeeded against incredible odds, posed in the form of obstacles created by McDonald's to impede and undermine Black store owners. But McDonald's put a target on Washington's back when he objected to its discriminatory treatment of himself and other Black store owners. In the current social climate, the stakes here are obvious. If a Black business leader like Herb Washington can be targeted and retaliated against for speaking out against racial discrimination by a major US corporation, then what Black business owner is safe? McDonald's acknowledged its discriminatory racial steering policy on numerous occasions and promised to ensure parity for its Black franchisees over and over again. But these promises were empty and remain unfulfilled. Herb Washington stayed in the McDonald's system for over 40 years because McDonald's continued to promise that it would end its history of discrimination and achieve parity for Black owners. He reasonably believed that once parity was achieved, the revenue and profitability numbers McDonald's touts would finally be obtainable for him and other Black owners. If anything, it's even worse today for Herb Washington and other McDonald's Black franchisees. In 1998, there were 377 Black owners in the McDonald's system. Now, just a little more than half. There's 186 Black owners today. These numbers lay bare McDonald's racist policies and practices toward Black operators. In short, the numbers don't lie. That concludes my opening statement. I look forward to responding to your questions in a few minutes.
Thank you. Again, that was Joe Piper, Managing Partner, Piper, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. Let's proceed to our second speaker, Herb Washington. Go ahead.
Thank you for joining us today. This is a day that I hoped would never have to happen. After 40 years in the McDonald's system, I always held out hope that they would live up to their promises and put an end to the 2-tier system one that is designed for white owners to flourish and grow, another designed to pigeonhole and oppress Black owners like me. I believe that McDonald's was going to do the right thing. They said they would. I believe that McDonald's was going to fix the rents disparity between Blacks and whites. I believe McDonald's when they said that they were going to fix the cash flow gap between Blacks and whites. I believe McDonald's when they said they would fix the sales disparity from Black restaurants to whites. I believe McDonald's when they said that Black owners could own restaurants in any community in the United States. I believe that. However, the culture at McDonald's has not changed. They don't listen. And the only time McDonald's does things for Black folk is when they're forced to. Think about McDonald's culture. Hell, they stole the franchises from the McDonald brothers. That was the beginning. Maya Angelou said it best. When they show you who they are, the first time, believe them. Instead, the situation today is that McDonald's has targeted me for extinction. The Arches are in full-scale retaliation mode against me. In the last 3 years, as you've heard, I've been forced to sell 7 of my restaurants, all of which ended up in the hands of white owners. But that wasn't enough. Now McDonald's is coming for the rest of my stores or restaurants, and I will no longer give up my seat on the bus for white franchisees. One of the stores that they're forcing me to sell was the focus of a protest in the 1960s. It was one of the stores at the heart of the fight that forced McDonald's to finally allow Black owners in their ranks. It's okay to come buy the food and help them to be wealthy. We had to fight for ownership of McDonald's franchises. If McDonald's is trying to send a message, it is painfully obvious. Going back to my days at Michigan State, migrating there from Flint, Michigan, being with the Oakland A's, I've always had to fight for everything that I've got. No one gave me anything. I've always been underestimated and many times undervalued. But I've always been a competitor, and I had the will, the focus to survive and thrive. I also had the team. I had the team to take on this mammoth challenge because I know I represent a lot of Black Americans that have the same issues that I have, but may not have the voice and are afraid to speak up. And many of them are brothers and sisters inside of McDonald's, the Black McDonald's Owners Association. I bet you didn't know that most Black owners leave the system broke. You heard me. Most Black owners leave here with very little money because of the two-tier system. If you're wondering why or how I became the #1 Black McDonald owner in face of the relentless racism, I will tell you, it took every ounce of me to succeed against this incredible and unfair odds that McDonald's forced on me. How did I succeed? Because of my upbringing in Flint, Michigan. Knowing that I had to fight for everything. Just to know that fight was going to last for a lifetime. No matter how good you are. It ain't good enough if your skin looks like mine. From the beginning, I was not allowed to buy white stores or stores in white neighborhoods. Instead, I was redlined to lower performing restaurants, stores that white owners didn't want. but I took nothing and made something out of it. I was not given the consideration and the breaks that McDonald's routinely extends to white owners to ensure they're successful. And when I spoke up and objected to this treatment and the treatment of all Black franchisees, McDonald's merely told me, shut up, go back to the grill and flip hamburgers and work harder. I've never done that my whole life. I've never allowed people to speak to me that way. And I'm not going to start now. People will probably ask, why now? And I have an easy answer for you if you ask that question. It's real simple. I can't breathe. The corporate entitled knee has been on my neck, my throat for 40 years. When I see racism and injustice, I see racism and injustice. I had to speak up. See me. After 4 decades in the McDonald's system, I have been targeted for extinction. At the very same time, McDonald's has deemed my son ineligible to purchase any restaurants. So much for legacy. While it may look like a multicultural mecca from the outside, the McDonald's playbook, red line with retaliation as their go-to plays. When I stood up for myself and other Black franchisees, McDonald's began to dismantle my life work, forcing me to sell one store after another to white owners. Behind the curtain, McDonald's is about cultural appropriation and restricting the transfer of intergenerational wealth in the Black community. For 40 years, McDonald's has been moving the goalposts. Now they want to destroy me. Let them try. I'm here. But let's be clear. I didn't quit on McDonald's. McDonald's quit on me. I'm just as active today in my restaurants, in my community. I was in my restaurants yesterday. And by the way, I don't owe any money. I don't owe McDonald's a dime. My bills are paid to McDonald's. I know McDonald's is coming for me with all of their weapons. But I'm not alone. If you're listening, no matter where you are or who you are, and you've been discriminated against, join the team in a way that's comfortable for you. Stay woke. It's on. Thank you for listening.
Thank you again. That was Herb Washington. Let's go to our third and final speaker, Kevin Conway, partner at Piper Wolf, Carr, Kane & Conway. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Herb. I couldn't be more proud to be here with you today, and thank you all for being here with us. Today, I'm going to discuss the institutional racism that is inextricably woven into the fabric of McDonald's corporate culture. And I will explain the process by which McDonald's is discriminating against Black operators and driving them out of the system. McDonald's has consistently discriminated against Black operators by excluding them from the same growth opportunities found at safer, higher volume stores, retaliating against Black franchisees for rejecting strong arm offers to continue operations in disadvantaged neighborhoods, denying Black franchisees meaningful assistance during financial hardships, and failing to provide any legitimate reasons for repeated denials of growth opportunities. To recap, Black franchisees must work harder to earn less, and McDonald's has never treated its Black and white franchisees equally. Over the years, Black franchisees have asked McDonald's to better support their stores, to afford them the same treatment that McDonald's extends to white franchisees. But those calls have gone unanswered. Instead, McDonald's has let its Black-owned stores fall behind, averaging $700,000 less in annual revenue than stores operated by white owners. Since 2010, McDonald's has tripled the cash flow gap between Black and white operators. After decades of redlining Black franchisees into largely low-volume stores in impoverished communities, McDonald's is feeling the pressure to give the appearance of parity. Rather than treat them fairly, provide them with the same opportunities as white franchisees, allow them to acquire stores in any location, regardless of racial demographics, McDonald's is systematically driving Black franchisees out of its system. By stripping Black owners of their stores and turning them over to white owners, as McDonald's is doing with Herb, the fast food giant is engaged in a cynical exercise to make its numbers appear more race neutral. By forcing Black franchisees to turn over low-volume stores to white owners, McDonald's is attempting to create the appearance of parity. In effect, the low-volume stores drag down the average performance figures of white operators, thus creating the illusion of parity, yet again at the expense of the Black operator. McDonald's sets Black franchisees up to fail and then profits from their demise. To make matters worse, McDonald's is targeting Black operators like Herb Washington for extinction while spending millions of dollars marketing to the Black community, claiming to be for the culture. While McDonald's has joined the chorus of brands releasing hollow solidarity statements in support of Black Lives Matter and launched a marketing campaign to profit from that movement, it has done nothing to change its own internal policies and practices that perpetuate systemic racism by disadvantaging and squeezing out its Black franchise owners. Black franchise owners like Herb Washington don't need a marketing campaign telling them that McDonald's cares about Black people. They need McDonald's to end its corporate practices and policies that perpetuate inequality. Thank you. That concludes my statement.
Again, that was Kevin Conway, partner, Piper Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. And that takes us to the Q&A portion of the call. If you would ask a question, use the raise your hand function and your line will be unmuted when it's your turn to ask a question. And as a reminder, the Q&A period is for reporters only. If you're having any issues with your own audio or the raise your hand function, you can use the text-based Q&A box and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. And before we begin, I want to mention that a video recording of the news event will be available online later today at piperwolf.com. And that's also where you can find media materials, the lawsuit filing. That's piperwolf.com, no spaces. Okay. Let's go to our first question. It's coming from Matt Bruce at Atlanta Black Star.
Hello, gentlemen. Can you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
This question is for Herb. How you doing, Mr. Washington?
Hey, Matt, how you doing, man?
I think you're muted.
Let's make sure.
No, we can hear both of you, gentlemen.
Matt, they can hear us.
No, I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? We hear you and they can hear me.
Matt, why don't you go ahead and pose your question?
My question is, when you spoke out against the corporation, against McDonald's, how did you speak out? What were some of the allegations you made against them? Was it on multiple occasions over the course of several years, or was it something that you said on one instance?
Great question. This has been over my history in McDonald's. For example, the very first restaurant that I got, inner city, next to a housing complex called Fight Square, upstate New York. 7 months later, I get another inner city store next to Fight Village. And I started to ask the question, why is it that if I can grow, why can't I go to the suburbs? We're talking about in the 80s. In the 80s, I started this question. Then in 1998, somewhere along there, 18 Black McDonald owners went to the corporate McDonald's and said there's a need for parity for this very same things that I talked about today, i.e. rents, i.e. The sales gap, and we're not in the suburbs. And McDonald's put in a temporary, you hear me, temporary parity program that lasts 5 years and went away. So I've been talking about this for a long time. When I went to Cleveland and bought stores in Cleveland, Ohio, I immediately said, why is there only one Black person on the west side of Cleveland? And 30 years ago, or better, there was a big fight in Cleveland to get Blacks into the system. Can you believe today that we have this kind of system, that Blacks can't be on the west side of Cleveland? So I've been saying this fight, and I've been talking about this, and I've been on the board of McDonald, the Black McDonald's Association, and they've been in this fight since the inception about these kind of disparities. So this isn't new. I've been doing it all the time. And usually what McDonald's does is they give you a few trinkets, if you will, to quiet you, to pacify you, but they don't fix the problem. That's McDonald's reality. They're not going to give up power until they're made to. They're not going to have parity until they're made to have parity. McDonald's doesn't believe in it. The people running this corporation, they don't believe in it, because if they did, they could fix it. They got all the power. They direct where every restaurant goes. And when they say they don't, that's not true, because they can exercise something called the right of first refusal and sell that restaurant to anyone they want to. They are judge and jury. They want to fix it, they could have fixed this.
Thank you. Let's go to our next question. It comes from Luke Barr at ABC News.
Hey guys.
Go ahead and enable your audio.
Hey guys, thanks for this. What was the reason McDonald's gave you when you spoke up? What was the reason they gave you for not fixing this disparity?
Well, hi Luke, how are you? Initially, McDonald's reply was, need to work harder. There's opportunities within your own restaurant, in that we are going to work with the Black owner operators to make this better. And typically what happened, a few Black owners got a store here, a store there. But in terms of a wholesale fix, it never happened. The first real opportunity not opportunity, but where we really came together was when McDonald's and that 18 Black McDonald's owners sat down with the corporation, the CEO, and demanded parity. And that parity was a temporary program. Temporary. And that's how we're still where we are today. At one point, we had close to 400 McDonald owner operators at one point. Today, we have about 186, 187. How can that be? The cash flow differential in different parts of the state can be hundreds of thousands of dollars per store, less than their white counterparts. McDonald's is out there now, as Joe and Kevin talked about, trying to do this media campaign to help Black operators, so they say. I think we would all agree with that, would we not? That's what the campaign is saying. You know what the help that McDonald's just recently offered me? If you care to know, McDonald's recently offered me, it amounts to $6 a day per restaurant to help my sales gap. $6 a day per restaurant to help my sales gap between my restaurants and my white counterparts within the McDonald's system. I can't even buy a Happy Meal with that kind of help. You tell me. I'm not lying. I got it in writing. I got it in writing. The retaliation, they don't want a guy like me around because I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth. I've been carrying this a long time. I've been carrying this kind of stuff a long time, not just me, there's many others. Think about this. There's a huge sales gap. There's a huge financial gap. And you offer Herb Washington? Now, why do you offer me some pittance like that? That's help? That's help. Help where? Third world countries are better off than that. And this is the mighty, mighty golden arches.
Let's move on to our next question if we could. It's coming from Alex Coffey at The Athletic. And go ahead and enable your audio, Alex. There you go.
Hi, Herb. How's it going?
Good. How you doing, Alex?
Good, good. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier a two-tier system, and I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on just how that looked on the ground level, how that worked.
How it looks is that, quite simply, in many cases, white owner-operators have higher volume restaurants than blacks. They are given opportunities for the higher volume restaurants, which puts them in a position to be more successful. Their cost to running those restaurants is a lot cheaper. As an example, I have a restaurant I have to have security in, okay? My counterpart will have a restaurant on the other side of town, does not have to have security in. During COVID, I try to open up the lobbies of a restaurant of mine. I got to have security in there. My counterpart across town, they don't have to do that. My cost of doing business oftentimes is a lot higher. And McDonald's has a way of leveling the playing field if they wanted to, but they choose not. Sometimes when you do more with less, you get penalized as opposed to getting rewarded. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, let's remember that McDonald's is making their money off the top line revenue. So all of those increased costs that Herb's talking about don't matter to McDonald's. They make their money off the top line. So every single penny that Herb has to spend that a white operator doesn't have to spend doesn't affect McDonald's business model. It just affects Herb's.
Okay, let's go to our next question. It comes from Nancy Armour at USA Today.
Hi, thanks for doing this. I've got two questions for you. Herb, was there any consideration for you to join the lawsuit that was filed last fall by other Black franchise owners against McDonald's? And second, you mentioned that you've had 7 restaurants taken away in the last 3 years. Can you describe how they do that, the reasonings that they give you?
Can you repeat the first question? I want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Sure. There was a lawsuit that was filed against McDonald's last, I believe it was September, by other Black franchisee owners. And I'm just curious if you'd given thought at that point to joining that lawsuit, because it seems to make some of similar arguments to yours.
Yeah, there are some, I can understand that. However, there are some real clear differences in that particular lawsuit, and I'll start there. First of all, that particular lawsuit, if I'm not mistaken, that you're referring to, is a lawsuit of former McDonald Black owners. And some of their issues, I'm not fully immersed in terms of what they all are. And I'm a current McDonald's owner. So I don't know that the attorneys are on the call and they can chime in here, whether or not mixing the two would make the most sense, because there's two different things that are going on, although many of the issues or some of the issues are the same that they faced as well, and maybe why they are in the position that they're in. So that's my thought, but the lawyers might want to weigh in there.
Yeah, I'll hop in a little. This is Kevin Conway from Piper Wolf. Herb Washington's plight is very similar to many Black operators in this system, and many of them are fighting for some of the same things, which is absolutely correct, and we talk about that throughout this entire process. We've been talking about that. But in addition to Herb still being there, this is talking about retaliation. This is talking about somebody who was successful despite the obstacles placed in front of him. This is talking about McDonald's trying to cancel his legacy and block his son from being an operator of McDonald's restaurants. This takes off from that case. And Herb's case is so unique because Herb is unique because he is so successful despite what has been put in front of him. And McDonald's has targeted him, unlike any other Black operator, to not just dismantle all of his operation, but to literally cancel his legacy at McDonald's.
Great. I think we can move along to our next question. It's coming from Justin Mitchell at WFMJ in Youngstown. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Justin.
Hi, this is actually Lindsay McCoy. I'm the reporter working the story. Hi, guys. And we're from Youngstown. So I just wanted you to clarify, Herb, how many locations you still have that are operating here across the region and in other states. And then also, if you have a response, we did email McDonald's corporate telling them about the lawsuit, and they allege that they believe that some of the issues you're having were attributed to some of your own issues within your own restaurants. And one of the things that they cite are health code violations, infestation, other issues over the years. Can you kind of go into that and how you do or do not believe that that has anything to do with your success?
14 restaurants I still have. And as it relates to the claims that McDonald's may be making, I would just simply say this: treat me the same way you've treated white operators that may have had similar situations. And over a 40-year span of time, you're gonna hit a few speed bumps. I don't care what career you have. So treat me how you treat white folk. Treat me fair. But what McDonald's didn't say to you is this: because any of those things you talk about could be fixable. And I'm not admitting to anything here, okay? But understand this: what McDonald's didn't say to you, it sounds like, and you right here in Youngstown, so what's up? They didn't say, hey, Herb's restaurants do less volume than his white counterparts. They didn't talk about that, did they? They don't want to direct the narrative another way, away from the bigger problem, the bigger issue. And that is parity of Black and white owners in the system. So that's what I submit to you relative to that feedback from McDonald's.
This is not unexpected. This is just McDonald's again retaliating against Herb and again treating him totally differently than they would other white operators. We fully expected that McDonald's would come out with some sort of statement like this with manufactured problems about Herb Washington in order to try and tear down the extremely successful career that Herb Washington has been able to have at McDonald's despite all of the obstacles they placed in his path.
You don't get to, as many restaurants that I've owned over, my 40 years by being a bad McDonald's operator. You don't stay in this system for 40 years, 40 in any career, if you are such a bad actor. They get rid of you. Let's face it. The Archers is going to put up with someone who's bringing down the brand.
Okay, let's go to our next question. It comes from John Shea at the San Francisco Chronicle. And go ahead and unmute yourself, John.
Yeah, hi Herb, how are you?
Hey John, how you doing?
Good, thanks. See, I'm trying to find out the end game here. What are you hoping for as a result of all this? What are you trying to gain? Whether it's financially or getting franchises back or just getting the message out. And also, is it true you've had as many as 27 franchises and you said you have 14 now? And yes. Does that mean they took away 13 or did I hear 7 or what's the math?
So most recently 7, over a period of time. Yeah, I did have 27 at one time. A few have been closed, at the discretion of McDonald's, because changing different demographics. And again, changing different demographics in neighborhoods that, are impoverished, and you close these restaurants and you walk away, McDonald's doesn't kick in a dime, say, hey, you've ran these stores for X. And because you ran these restaurants, McDonald's still holds on to the real estate. Let's not forget. Even though the store is closed, in many cases, they still own the real estate. So they still have a valuable asset. I put in all that time, the money, data, so on and so forth. I walk away, I have nothing. I have some equipment that has appreciated over X period of years that basically has no value in the marketplace. So that's what happened with those stores. And I'm sorry, you had the first part of your question was? The end game?
Yeah, I think it was essentially, what do you want to accomplish with this lawsuit?
What I want to accomplish with this lawsuit is to make McDonald's stop the systemic racism that exists in the two-tier system where Black owner-operators cannot be as successful as whites, and that there is a system for them and there's one for people that look like me. I want to see Black folk, at one time there was 42 Black McDonald's executives. 42. 2 years ago, my math might be slightly off, it was down to 7. 7. So not only me, the owner operator, they were trying to make extinct, they were doing it to their own employees that look like me. If you speak up, you are endangered species in McDonald's if you have color, because they don't want to hear you, because they know it's wrong. From 42 to 7. And a lot of the Blacks that they have now working at McDonald's, have anything against them, but look at their tenure at McDonald's. Less than 2 years. Many of them less than a year. A number of them less than a year. Again, I'm not disparaging that. What I'm saying is this is a campaign. McDonald's knows that they're in trouble with representation, both inside the corporation, in those C-suites, as well as with their franchisees.
Great. Let's go to our next question. It comes from Alex Stokes at WJW in Cleveland. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I just wanted to clarify as well, of the 14 restaurants that you said, Mr. Washington, you still have, how many of those are in Ohio/Northeast Ohio area?
All of them are Northeast Ohio, except the ones I have in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go ahead to our next question. It's coming from Lisa Fickenshire at the New York Post. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lisa.
Yes, hi. Thanks for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for taking my question. Mr. Washington, I'm wondering if you can explain the situation with your son, what it is that happened, what he was denied, and what you were told.
What I've been told is that McDonald's has a system whereby you go through this training process. They call it a second generation program. My son went through that program. Was told by an executive of the company that he was completed it. Told him congratulations. I got a call also indicating that he had completed the program. Sometime later, as I started to speak out more on issues within the McDonald's franchising world, and McDonald's continued to, I would call, squeeze me relative to this extinction, he was later told that he was no longer eligible to purchase restaurants from me or anyone.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll go along to our next question. It comes from Jess Harden at Mahoning Matters. Jess, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Mr. Washington. Thanks for taking my question today.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm also in the Youngstown area.
Oh, yeah.
So it's nearby.
The valley. You're in the valley. You got some
Um,
bad weather today.
Oh, we sure did. So we also reached out to McDonald's prior to the news conference today, and another thing that they claimed was that they're working to increase diversity of franchisees under the leadership of a new chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. I was wondering what your response to McDonald's supposed efforts to increase diversity are, and what else you think needs to be done on their part in order to comply and respond with, the allegations you've made.
Can you repeat what they said?
They said that one of the things they're doing to increase diversity is a program under the leadership of a new chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose they announced this in July.
I wonder why. Why now? That's what I would ask McDonald's. Why now? The people running McDonald's, they've been there for 3, 4, 5 years. Why now? This administration's been in place. What made you think that you needed to have a chief diversity officer? The fact that McDonald's stores owned by Blacks went from almost 400 down to 187. You went from, under your administration, you went from 42 Black executives down to 7. Was it the fact that when you look at the landscape in America today, and you look at inclusion, you ask yourself, wow, where do we stand? We're supposed to be this gold standard of society. How do we measure up? So it took you to now to have a diversity and inclusion officer? You had one before. Did that person do the job? So to me, it's, hey, we got to get this, we have to get someone because it looks good. We need to do this. Because if they wanted to, had they wanted to do this, why didn't they do this 4 years ago? They saw the numbers declining, number of stores Blacks owned. Why didn't they jump in then? The Times today has a spotlight on McDonald's and corporations that function this way. It's bad for business. It's bad for Black consumers. They see what's going on in McDonald's. They see how we're treated. America sees it. It's bad for business. And that's when McDonald's responds.
Okay, let's go to our next question. It comes from Kyle Rosenbaum at Marcom Weekly.
Hold on one second, Max. I apologize, but I just wanted to make the point that in 1996, McDonald's admitted its policy of racial steering, with their executive vice president writing to the Black Owners Association, quote, "For business reasons we thought valid at the time, the company has placed many Black franchisees in restaurants that have not allowed them to achieve the same level of economic success as their peers." And in 1996, when I was graduating from college, he promised to create and implement a strategy designed to achieve parity for African-American franchisees. I've been practicing law for well over 20 years. They've been promising this for at least that long. And just like Herb said, why now?
Thanks. And we'll go to our question from Kyle now. Kyle Rosenbaum at Marcom Weekly. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you. Hi, Herb.
Hey, Kyle. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good. Where you at, Kyle?
I'm based out of New York and Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So you generally mentioned that McDonald's is now running a campaign to show support for the Black community. What do you say to the marketing and advertising agencies and vendors that choose to continue to work with the company despite your allegations?
What I would say is you got to hold McDonald's accountable. And the only way you do that is, you have to ask yourself, if you're spending dollars, are they doing the right thing? Is this the kind of culture that you want to be associated with? Is this the kind of culture that speaks to the fabric of America, where everyone has an opportunity to be successful? Do you want your name associated with people like that?
I think we're at a place now you can literally have to sit there and think, is McDonald's good for my brand? And that's what I'd ask them to think about.
Great, let's go to our next question. It comes from Katie Kaiser at Spectrum News. Katie, go ahead and unmute your line. Thank you.
Yes, hello. This is Seth Voorhees calling from Spectrum News in Rochester. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi there. Rochester, New York, Rochester, Minnesota, Rochester, Michigan.
Rochester, New York, sir. We're
the Rock. All righty. I know a little bit about that place.
Yes. You may remember our station used to be called R News back then.
Oh,
Time
yeah.
Warner Cable.
Absolutely, I do.
Excellent. Well, I know you touched on it briefly before, just some of the difficulties that you were running into while you were starting the business here in Rochester. And I wondered if you could expand on that a bit.
I was happy to get in the system. I was very happy. I was enthusiastic. I had, played professional ball, well, those sorts of things. And I get my first restaurant, at the corner of Clinton and Clifford. And that restaurant missed its projections by 30%. 30%, right out the chute. That's how badly that store missed. McDonald's misunderstood the dynamics, the demographics in that particular area in terms of being able to support that McDonald's. Very short time later, I got another store, and Fight Square is right there. And you know what that neighborhood is like. I get another store on West Main Street, down the street from Nick Tahoe's. Is Nick still around? Nick Tahoe still around? Okay.
The gentleman's muted now. He can't respond. Sorry.
Yeah, but anyway, that was my next one. So I got two very difficult restaurants to run from the get. That was the diet that I had to digest every day. How many people in McDonald's of color would have traded places, or that were white, would have traded places with me? Dealing with that on a Friday night. Not many. And the cost of doing business was greater, even back then. My average customer did not have that kind of the disposable income that the customers had in Henrietta, Greece, Pittsburgh, Brighton, etc. So I had to take less. I had less and had to compete and do the same sort of things with less. And sometimes my cost was a lot more for doing business. But
Okay, we can move along to our next question. It's a follow-up from Nancy Armour at USA Today. Nancy, go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
Hey, Herb, I'm just wondering if you can describe what McDonald's was telling you in the last couple of years as they were trying to get you to sell some of your restaurants. And I believe the terminology in the lawsuit is rewrite. I'm not quite sure what that is, but if you could describe what they were telling you as their reasoning for trying to push you to sell some of your restaurants.
So the rewrite is a situation whereby you have a 20-year lease, and in year 17, McDonald's comes out and they will tell you whether or not they're going to rewrite you. Okay. And in the beginning, I did get a letter from McDonald's. We have copies where they were going to rewrite me. Then they reversed themselves. Now they're not going to rewrite me. And they've held fast to that. Then there was a question about selling restaurants. And if I sold these restaurants, they would rewrite me. So in one particular case, I said, okay, put it in writing. They didn't want to do that. I said, why should I believe you then? And I'd have been selling the restaurants, based upon the history to someone white, based on the history of my dealings with McDonald's. But the rewrite, they didn't want to give me a guarantee that they were going to rewrite me. I didn't trust McDonald's. I don't trust McDonald's. So I wouldn't go forward. Now, McDonald's has a review process. Can you imagine having a review process where you disagree with your boss? They have their information, you have yours. You send it in. So you don't get a chance to ask any questions there. You don't get a chance to have an appeal after that decision comes back. You have no appeal, okay? And I've been told that McDonald's has never reversed itself in that process. Can you imagine that? And in that process, the people who are speaking against you, they're in that room, okay, making a presentation. They are the oppressor and the punisher, if you will. You think that they're going to speak in a positive manner in your behalf? You aren't there. Your representative is not there. You have a written document that's sent in, they review it, they don't call you to verify whether or not something is correct or not. There can be data in that information that is years old, which is incorrect. And in my case, the data years old, years, not a week, not 2 weeks, years old. And they use that data as a criteria for making decisions about rewriting me. I could not, I had no input. I just know the data that they used was very old.
Let's also be clear. At this juncture, just like all of Herb's career, they're telling Herb, consolidate here, sell some stores, move to Cleveland. Sell some stores. Oh, actually, why don't you sell the Cleveland stores and move to Youngstown? After he's already just been forced to sell a couple stores in Youngstown. Then it's, if you sell these stores, we'll give you these nice stores in Worcester in the suburbs that are high volume. Then all of a sudden they move the goalposts again on Herb. And well, actually, we're not going to give you those, which is actually very reminiscent of the time they actually went to the phase of awarding him a store in University Heights. University Heights, for those of you that are familiar with Cleveland, is practically on the campus of John Carroll University. That would have been a high traffic, phenomenal store for Herb to have. He already started purchasing things for that store where they said, you know what, Herb, we got you, but we got to give this to somebody else, a white owner. And what did I got you mean? What I got you meant was, we just hoodwinked you again, and now we're coming for the rest of your stores as we keep moving the goalposts.
Great, let's go to our next question. It comes from Eric Johnson at the Chicago Crusader. Go ahead and unmute, Eric.
All right, thank you very much. I joined at around 1:30 because I thought this interview began at that time. But Mr. Washington, can you refresh me, if you had not already gone over it, why would McDonald's force you to turn over your franchises to white owners?
Why would they force me to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so McDonald's has the ultimate authority as to who you sell your restaurants to, okay? So you have to be on an approved list to buy restaurants. And McDonald's can direct you to individuals that are approved. So McDonald's gives you a list of individuals that they want to see in the hands of to be the franchisee of your particular restaurant, because they're trying to grow with people. And so when you get basically only white people to sell your stores to, you don't have much choice, but to sell to those people. It isn't like you can go yourself outside of Ohio or outside of Cleveland or outside of Youngstown, really, and get someone to come in and buy your restaurant. I mean, I don't have that kind of database of people who might want to come in. McDonald's does, because they have a national franchising association. And so in many cases, it's to help to build the wealth and the success, potentially of a white operator. There's a number of things behind the scenes that take place that I may or may not, I may not be aware of. But I know this, that there are occasions where I've sold restaurants to white operators. And those white operators were given inducements that I was not given. And that is not unusual, but it's wrong. That's what happens. Black operators leave the system, and McDonald's gives white operators incentives to go into those very same stores and to help them to be successful. But they don't make the same offer to the current Black owner operator. That's how they work the system. That's how they work it. And then they lowball you on what they want to pay you.
And let's not forget the very first Black operator for McDonald's went and tried to purchase a store from a white operator. And McDonald's came in and shut that down, because people always forget McDonald's has that last right of first refusal. And again, if you weren't on at the beginning of this, one of the things that Herb's talking about, where you're getting forced to turn over low volume stores to white operators, it's that appearance of parity, because those low volume stores drag down on the overall average of the performance of the white operator's store, giving an illusion of parity at the expense of the Black operator.
So you have a low volume restaurant, and if I may just a little bit, Kevin, you have a region that has low volume, and the Black operators' volume is what's pulling it down. So all you have to do, you don't have to give Black operators any more stores necessarily. Just get rid of some of their low volume stores, and you can make your numbers look better to the public as if you did something. You didn't necessarily do anything. You didn't give them what the real ultimate goal is, to give them a different mix of stores. Stay with me, a different mix of stores. See, the success in McDonald's is about your mix of stores. Your mix. If all you eat every day is soup out of a can, it's very difficult for you to be nutritious and have a healthy body. In the financial world of McDonald's, if all you have is inner city stores, it's very difficult for you to be financially healthy if you don't have some high volume suburban stores. That's how this system works. So your mix has to have a balance to it, like one's portfolio has to have a mix to it, has to have balance. But if you take away the low volume, you can say, hey, beat your chest. Look what I did for Black operators. I closed the gap. But did you make it better? They still may have a slew of low volume restaurants. You closed the gap. But are they better? Are they better off? Are they on parity with their white counterparts? Fewer stores now, less volume. So when you do the average, McDonald's numbers look better. A lot of games can be played here.
We're running short on time, so let's take one final question. It's coming from Tracy Jan at the Washington Post. Please unmute yourself, Tracy.
Hi, thank you for taking my question, Mr. Washington. I just wanted to follow up on the last question to see if you're able to elaborate on the types of inducements McDonald's gave white operators to buy some of these stores. Thank you.
I guess to a certain extent, I have to ask my attorneys how much detail we want to go into here, relative to that. So I need to defer to them for a moment.
Herb, I think you can answer that question with some of the most recent transactions that happened with your stores.
Okay, all right. So having said that, I recently sold 3 restaurants in Cleveland, Ohio, to a white operator. And it was a tumultuous negotiation. McDonald's had given me a number. They told me I should get it. I had remodeled the restaurant. McDonald's had told me I should get at least this for the store, not a dime less. When it came time to sell the store, McDonald's divisional accountant backed up on the number. I had to fight tooth and nail. The sale goes through. McDonald's sends me a letter and said that they had helped me. They had helped me sell 3 restaurants. Keep in mind that 2 of these restaurants I had written McDonald's a few years earlier and told McDonald's that they could have them back for free. Take their stores back. Take those stores back. They could have them free. Just pay me for the equipment that was in there, because I no longer could run them. They're their stores. They didn't want them back. This is their restaurants. They didn't want them back. So what McDonald's ended up doing, this deal goes forward, McDonald's gives this individual $3 million. $3 million. Tracy, you heard me. $3 million in incentives to buy the restaurants. Then they write me a letter, unbeknownst to me. They write me a letter and say that they gave me $3 million. So I assume they gave the white operator $3 million and they gave me $3 million. Unfortunately, the $3 million never hit my bank account. They never reduced my rents by $3 million. They wrote that in a letter. They gave me $3 million. Tracy, if I give you $1, you can use it however you choose. If I give you something. So McDonald's tried to backtrack real quick. They put this letter out saying they gave me something. They didn't. That's how they do it. That's how it happens. Can you imagine? Would you not take a low volume situation? If they give you $3 million, they rebuild the store for you, they lower your rent, and even help you on other stores that have nothing to do with the deal that's in front of you. And how do you win? It's me fighting McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's comes at you in so many ways. I mean, you see the picture behind me. I mean, sometimes I just had to rope-a-dope until I figured out and put the team together. But $3 million. And we got a couple other situations that they've done some similar things. $3 million. Trace, every time I say it, it just takes a hump out of my heart. That's wrong.
Great, thank you. We are running out of time. We want to make sure that you know where to get more information following today's news conference. To connect with anyone you're hearing from today or to get more info, you can contact Max Carlin at 703-276-3255. That's 703-276-3255. There will be a recording of this news event online later today. It will be at piferwolf.com. That's piferwolf, no spaces.com. We do thank you for joining this news event sponsored by the law firm Pifer, Wolf, Carr, Kane, and Conway. And that concludes today's news conference. Thank you.